Maria Hassan walked into the busy hospital cafeteria with a quiet confidence. She wore her nurse's uniform with pride, and tucked in her bag was one of Amina's drawings, simple sketches of an operating room, filled with bright light and sharp instruments. To Maria, those drawings proved what she already knew. Her daughter could one day become a surgeon. As she reached the lunch line, Maria smiled at a few familiar faces, then bravely spoke up. My daughter is 17, and she practices sutures. On fruit peels at home, she has the steady hands and calm mind of a surgeon in training. The reaction was instant. One of her co-workers snorted, a tall man with a roll of gauze under his arm. Another woman laughed so hard her tray wobbed in her hands. The others joined in, exchanging glances and shaking their heads. They had seen Amina only as a teenager, someone might volunteer in the children's ward, but never someone who could guide a real medical procedure. Maria felt the laughter burn her cheeks, but she did not shrink. She smoothed her uniform and answered softly, I know what I saw. Later that evening, Maria returned home to a small apartment filled with the soft sounds of her daughter practicing. Amina sat at their kitchen table under the bright lamp, carefully stitching together halves of an orange peel. The little silver needle traced gentle arcs in the fruit's flesh, and a thin green thread held the pieces neatly in place. When Maria walked in, Amina looked up, curiosity in her dark eyes. Maria held out her phone and showed the group chat where her colleagues had joked about her claim. Amina frowned, her brow creasing with worry. They don't believe me, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Maria sat beside her daughter and took her hand. Sometimes people laugh at things they do not understand, she said. You are different, but that is a good thing. You have a gift. Amina nodded, her worry melting into a small, determined smile. She set the orange peel aside and opened a thick anatomy book, its pages full of pictures of the human body. In the weeks that followed, Amina spent more time in the school's biology lab. Her teacher, Mr. Patel, watched as she moved with a quiet confidence. Under his guidance, she learned how to handle scalpels safely, how to identify veins and arteries in a preserved heart, and how to keep her hands perfectly still. Other students hurried through their tasks, eager to finish and talk about weekend plans. Amina worked slowly, her eyes tracing every line, her fingers steady. When Mr. Patel praised her precision, she blushed and looked down at the table. At home, Maria dug out an old medical textbook she had used in nursing school. It was heavy, its cover cracked, and dust gathered in the corners of its pages. Each night, as the city lights flickered outside their window, Maria and Amina sat together, reading chapters on human anatomy and surgical technique. Sometimes they practiced suturing on banana peels, sometimes on potatoes. They talked about famous surgeons like Dr. Fatima Nir, who had grown up in the same city and had once been laughed at before she became celebrated. At her mother's work, Amina felt her belief grow stronger. She began to dream about the day she might stand in a real operating room. Lights shining overhead, instruments laid out in neat rows. She imagined saving lives, but doubts still crept in when her classmates teased her. One day in the hallway, someone called her Dr. Fruit Peel, and the hall echoed with laughter. Amina's cheeks burned, and she hurried to her locker, clutching her books tightly. That afternoon she sat alone under a tree in the school courtyard, tracing shapes on the concrete with her shoe. Maria found her there after work. She kneeled beside her daughter and took her hand. People laugh to hide their own fears, she said gently. They are afraid of something new, but you have something they do not, a dream and the courage to chase it. Amina looked at her mother and nodded. The next day she asked Mr. Patel for extra time in the lab. He agreed, surprised but pleased by her determination. Soon, she was staying an hour after school almost every day, perfecting her motions, learning to tie knots with surgical thread, and memorizing the steps of basic procedures. One afternoon, Maria received an invitation to a hospital charity gala. It was a grand event held in a banquet hall upstairs from the emergency department. The guest of honor was Mr. Langston, the CEO of the entire hospital network, a man whose decisions affected thousands of patients each year. Maria hesitated. She knew the gala would be full of suits and gowns, and she worried about the teasing if she brought Amina along. But she also saw an opportunity. "Bring her," Maria told the head nurse. "Let her see how hospitals work." At the highest level, on the night of the gala, Amina wore a simple navy dress, her hair pulled back neatly. Maria introduced her to a few guests, and Amina greeted them with polite smiles. The room glittered with chandeliers. The tables were covered in crisp white linens. The sound of soft music filled the air. As Maria stood near the serving table, she felt proud to walk beside her daughter. Amina's eyes shone with wonder, taking it all in. Then, just as the main course was being served, a sudden hush fell over the room. Mr. Langston, who had been giving a speech, clutched his chest and staggered. He sank to his knees. A woman screamed. Guests froze, unsure what to do. Maria's heart raced. Nearby, a security guard shouted for the on-site medic, but no one moved quickly enough. Amina stepped forward without hesitation. She knelt beside Mr. Langston, placed one hand on his forehead, and checked his pulse. In that moment, Maria realized just how right she had been. Her daughter, the girl teased as Dr. Fruitpeel, was about to show everyone what she could do. Maria would be there to see the world change its mind. The moment was tense. Amina felt her heart pound as she knelt beside Mr. Langston on the polished marble floor. The guests froze, their voices caught in their throats. A silver tray clattered to the ground. Amina's mind worked quickly. She placed one hand on his wrist and felt the weak flutter of his pulse. She pressed two fingers gently against his neck, counting silently. His breathing was shallow. She turned her head to the nearest waiter. "Please get me a cloth and some water," she said firmly. The waiter stared in shock but obeyed. He dashed off. Amina felt a wave of fear wash over her. She remembered the hours she spent practicing compressions on fruit peels and vegetables with her mother. Now, she needed real strength. She moved. One hand to the center of his chest and pressed down firmly, then released. She repeated the motion. The room was filled with the soft thump of her compressions. After 30 beats, she paused and tilted his head back. His jaw was slack, and his mouth was slightly open. She pinched his nose and blew air into his lungs. She counted 1, 2. Then she checked for a pulse again. The pulse was gone. Amina's mind raced. She shifted to a faster rhythm of compressions. She knew that every second counted. The security guard barked orders at the guests to clear a path. Someone called for the paramedics. A chorus of urgent voices rose in the hall. Yet Amina felt calm, as if she floated above the panic. She thought of her mother's gentle reassurance of every late night spent studying anatomy. All of it led to this. A tall man in a black suit and a stethoscope around his neck pushed through the crowd. He knelt beside Amina. She recognized him as Dr. Lee, one of the hospital's senior physicians. He looked surprised to see a teenager holding the scene together. He quickly moved to her side. 10 more compressions, he said. They together, they pressed down in unison. A nurse arrived with a bag of saline solution. Amina helped Dr. Lee find a vein in Mr. Langston's arm and insert an IV line. Amina's hands were steady. She guided the nurse, weaving between each instruction with clear, calm words. "Raise his leg," she told one assistant. "Let's get his head tilted a bit more." The assistants followed her lead as if she were the head surgeon. A small crowd of hospital staff watchers gathered around the entrance. Some held their phones ready to record. Amina did not notice. Her world narrowed to the body at her side. After what felt like an eternity, the paramedics burst through the doors. They set down their equipment and took over. One paramedic pressed for more compressions while another prepared the defibrillator. Amina stepped back but stayed close. She watched as they placed the paddles on Mr. Langston's chest. A flash of power lit the paddles. The room gasped. Paramedic checked again for a pulse. Then relief washed over Amina as she felt the faint thump beneath her fingers. They loaded him onto the stretcher with practiced ease. Amina stood as they wheeled him past. His eyes were closed and a thin bead of sweat glistened on his forehead. Before the doors closed, Mr. Langston's hand shot out. He grasped Amina's wrist. He squeezed gently. She bent down so he could speak. His voice was weak but clear. "Thank you. Strong hands," he whispered. Then the door slid shut. Silence reigned in the ballroom. Few guests let out the breath they had been holding. Dr. Lee stood and offered Amina a nod of respect. The crowd parted for her as she walked back toward her mother. Maria's face was pale and wet with tears. She rushed forward and hugged her daughter. Amina felt warmth spread through her chest. She pressed her face into her mother's shoulder, overwhelmed by the moment. People began to whisper in clusters. Some guests patted Amina on the back. One older woman dabbed her eyes with a handkerchief. A man in a tuxedo offered her his champagne glass, even though it was accidentally knocked over earlier, and tipped it. In her direction, as a silent toast, Amina felt shy but proud. She let her mother guide her to a seat at a nearby table. Maria held her daughter's hand and spoke softly. "You were amazing. I am so proud." Amina nodded but could not find her voice. Her mind replayed the scene, her hands on the chest, her voice steady, the defibrillators flash. She thought of every practice stitch, every chapter she read. All those small moments had led here. Soon, hospital administrators arrived. They wore serious faces and carried clipboards. One of them, a woman with silver hair, introduced herself as Ms. Rivera, the hospital network's chief operating officer. She offered her hand to Amina. "Your courage and skill saved our CEO's life tonight," she said. "On behalf of everyone here, thank you." Amina shook her hand, her grip firm despite the butterflies in her stomach. The administrators spoke to Maria privately for a moment. Maria glanced back at her daughter, who watched with wide eyes. Maria gave a small nod. A few minutes later, Ms. Rivera returned and spoke to Amina directly. She described a special program that would bring her to the hospital for summer classes. She spoke of scholarships and mentorships. The words felt like music to Amina's ears. She accepted, her cheeks flushed with excitement. After the event, reporters gathered near the entrance. Cameras flashed as Mr. Langston was carried out on a stretcher. Amina stood with her mother and the administrators, the nightlights from the cameras blinking around her. A reporter pushed forward. "Young lady," she said into a microphone, "how did you feel when you saw the CEO collapse?" Amina took a breath. She thought of every moment she had been teased at school. She thought of the doubts that had tried to slow her down. She thought of her mother's belief in her. Then she spoke. I saw someone in trouble and I knew. Had to help," she said softly. Her voice carried across the hall. The flashbulbs popped again. Maria hugged her from behind. In that instant, every person who had laughed at them in the cafeteria, every classmate who had teased her felt a sting of regret. News of the rescue spread through social media. By morning, hashtags praised the teen surgeon and the girl who saved a CEO. Messages of admiration poured in from across the country. Amina's simple video of her compressions, taken on a bystander's phone, went viral. People commented on her calm voice, her quick thinking, her steady hands. School the next day, the cafeteria was quieter. Few students whispered as Amina passed by. Some offered shy smiles. One brave girl said, "That was amazing what you did." Amina nodded and sat down to eat her lunch in peace. The girl next to her asked about the hospital program. Amina described the summer classes with a small smile. Maria stood in the nurses' station that morning, reading the online headlines. Co-workers approached one by one. A tall man who had mocked her claim the week before stuck out his hand. "I'm sorry," he said. "I didn't believe it." "You were right," Maria smiled, and shook his hand. She felt a quiet joy. That evening, as they sat together at home, Amina took out her medical textbooks again. She flipped to a chapter on suturing technique. Maria handed her a tray of tomatoes and a spool of thread. Amina began to stitch, her hands firm. Her mother watched with pride. The world had laughed, but now it listened. And Amina knew her journey was only beginning. Amina woke up early the next morning to the soft light of dawn filtering through her curtains. She felt a strange mix of excitement and nervousness. Today would be her first day in the hospital's special summer program. She dressed quickly. In simple clothes jeans and a neat blouse and sat at the kitchen table with her mother, who made warm toast and tea. Maria handed her a small envelope with the hospital's official invitation inside. Amina's hands trembled as she opened. Inside was a letter welcoming her to the program and explaining the schedule: morning lectures, afternoon lab work, and occasional rounds in the wards. At the door, Maria hugged her daughter tightly. "You've earned this chance," she said softly. "Remember to ask questions and learn all you can." Amina smiled, her heart full of gratitude. She climbed into the family's old sedan and watched familiar streets pass by. She thought of the crowded school hallways where she had once felt shy. She was heading to the same hospital where she had saved the CEO's life. The memory of that night gave her confidence. When she arrived, the hospital corridors stretched before her like a maze of white walls and bright lights. Nurse uniforms and doctor coats bustled past her. She clutched her invitation and followed the signs to the program office. Inside, Ms. Rivera greeted her with a warm smile. "Welcome, Amina," she said. "We are so glad you are here." Ms. Rivera introduced her to several other young students chosen for the program. They stood in a semicircle, some wide-eyed, others chatting shyly. Amina felt a mixture of camaraderie and competition. After introductions, the group gathered in a conference room. Dr. Lee, the senior physician who had helped beside her that night, stood at the front. He wore a crisp white coat and held a pointer, spoke calmly, explaining the program's goals to give these students hands-on experience and to inspire them toward medical careers. He said, "You have shown courage and skill. Now, we will build on that foundation. We'll see real patients, learn from experts, and practice procedures under close guidance." First came the lectures. The students sat in neat rows, notebooks open, as specialists spoke about anatomy, physiology, and patient care. Amina scribbled notes in neat handwriting, her mind absorbing every word. She felt proud to sit among them, yet aware that this was just the beginning of a long journey. During breaks, she chatted with another student, Luis, who dreamed of becoming an orthopedic surgeon. They compared their reasons for joining the program. Luis loved sports and wanted to help injured athletes. Amina wanted to be ready if anyone around her ever needed help. In the afternoons, they moved to the lab. White tiles gleamed under the bright lights. Tables held trays of tools, scalpels, forceps, suture threads. Preserved organs lay under glass lids. A supervising doctor demonstrated how to make precise incisions on a pig's heart to show the layers of muscle and tissue. Then she said, "Now you try." Amina stepped forward, lifted the lid, and found the heart beneath. She inhaled deeply, steadied her arm, and made a smooth cut following the demonstration. Her classmates paused their work and watched. She felt calm, as if her hands knew exactly what to do. Later that week, the students joined hospital rounds. They walked behind Dr. Lee, a kind surgeon with gentle eyes, as he visited patients recovering from various operations. Amina listened as he explained each patient's condition and progress. At one bed, he asked the students, "What did you learn from Amina's intervention last week?" The other students looked at her expectantly. Amina stepped forward and described the sequence, checking the pulse, starting chest compressions, guiding the resident, and supporting the paramedics. Dr. Lee nodded and said, "Excellent. That clarity and calmness are vital in emergencies." Word of her presence in the program reached the CEO, Mr. Langston, who invited her to meet him in his office. Amina felt her stomach tighten with nerves. The office was large, with floor-to-ceiling, windows overlooking the city. Mr. Langston sat behind a polished desk, his expression both serious and welcoming. "Amina," he said, "thank you again for saving my life. We're part of our family now. I want to offer you a mentor, Dr. Nur, one of our top surgeons. She will guide you through advanced training." Amina felt her eyes well with tears. She bowed her head and said, "Thank you, sir. I will work very hard and not disappoint you." Mr. Langston smiled and extended his hand. "I have no doubt." The next day, Dr. Noor arrived to meet the students. She was tall, with a calm voice and a kind smile. She invited Amina and a few others to observe a minor surgery. They entered a small operating room. A bright light shone on a patient's leg, where Dr. Noor repaired a torn tendon. Amina stood close, watching every motion. How Dr. Noor held her instruments, how she communicated with the team, how she kept the patient safe. Afterward, Dr. Noor invited Amina to scrub and wash her hands. Put on sterile gown and gloves and assist by handing instruments. Amina's heart raced as she stepped forward. Dr. Noor guided her hand to pass forceps at the right moment. Amina marveled at how precise the movements were. She felt honored and humble. When the surgery ended, the patient thanked them both. In the hallway, Dr. Noor placed a hand on Amina's shoulder. "You have the skills and the courage," she said. "With practice, you will become an excellent surgeon." Back in the lab, Amina practiced suturing on synthetic skin models. She tied knot after knot, striving for neat, even stitches. The other students cheered when she completed each task. She realized how far she had come from that day in the cafeteria when her classmates laughed at her mother's claim. Watched her with respect. As the weeks passed, Amina grew more confident. She learned to read vital signs, to assist in minor procedures, and to talk to patients so they felt at ease. She bonded with fellow students, sharing dreams and challenges. In her free moments, she called her mother to share stories of what she had learned. Maria listened with pride and sometimes offered tips from her nursing experience. One afternoon, the group gathered for a final project. Each student would present a case study of a patient they had followed. Amina chose the CEO's case yet. She focused not on his status, but on the medical details, the protocol for chest compressions, the timing of defibrillation, and the teamwork required. When she finished, the room clapped. Ms. Rivera stood and said, "This program is about learning, but also about inspiring. Amina, you have inspired us all." On the program's last day, there was a small ceremony. Each student received a certificate and a letter of recommendation. Amina's certificate bore her name and the title Excellence in Clinical Application. Dr. Lee handed it to her and smiled. "Well done," he said. Amina hugged him, grateful for his guidance. That evening, as she walked home with her mother, Amina felt a new sense of purpose. The city lights twinkled overhead. She imagined her future. Medical school, surgical rotations, long days and nights in operating rooms saving lives. She thought of the girl who once practiced on fruit peels, who sat alone under a tree because classmates teased her. That girl had become someone who now stood side by side with experts. At home, she carefully placed her certificates, letters, and photos from the graduation ceremony into a scrapbook. She added her old orange peel suturing practice on the first page, then a picture of the hospital gala, and finally a photo of her in scrubs with Dr. Noor. She closed the book and smiled at the journey recorded within its pages. Maria peeked into Amina's room and saw her daughter staring at the scrapbook. "You have grown so much," she said. Amina looked up and hugged her mother. "Thank you for believing in me," she whispered. That night, Amina fell asleep with excitement buzzing in her mind. She dreamed of a future operating room filled with patients and students, where she would not only save lives but also inspire the next generation. And under that dream, she heard her mother's voice say, "Always remember how far you have come." Amina's journey was only beginning, but she knew that with each step, she would carry the lessons of that summercourage.com and belief in oneself into everything she did. And the world, which once laughed at her mother's claim, would watch and wonder as Amina grew into the surgeon she was always meant to be. Amina's heart beat fast as she walked through the hospital's glass doors the morning after the summer program ended. She carried a small bag with her scrubs and a notebook filled with memories. Today, she would meet Dr. Noor for the first time as her official mentor. The lobby was quiet, filled with the soft hum of cleaners and the distant beep of monitors. Amina felt both excitement and nervousness, but she reminded herself of everything she had already learned. She found Dr. Noor in a sunny office overlooking the city. The tall surgeon stood by the window, looking out at the busy street below. When she turned and saw Amina, her face lit up in a warm smile. "Welcome back," she said. "I'm glad to see you." Amina returned the smile and stepped forward. Dr. Noor offered her hand, and they sat at a small round table. "I have reviewed your work in the summer program," Dr. Noor began. "Your precision in the lab and your calm during the CEOs. Emergency proved you belong here. I want you to start shadowing me in actual surgeries. Amina's eyes widened. Real surgeries? She asked. Dr. Nur nodded. You will scrub in and assist. You will not operate alone, of course. But you will learn the flow of the operating room, the language we use, and how we care for patients before and after surgery. Amina felt a thrill of joy. She opened her notebook and wrote, Assist doctor. Noor in surgery? Then she asked, When do we start? Dr. Noor checked her schedule. In 2 hours, I have a minor laparoscopic procedure. You can suit up then. After that, I'll introduce you to the entire surgical team. In the changing room, Amina put on her scrubs. She tied back her hair, washed her hands in the scrub sink, and slipped on sterile gloves. Every motion felt sacred. She paused too. Look at herself in the mirror, a teenager in green scrubs, ready for the next step in her journey. The operating room door opened, and Dr. Noor led the way. Bright lights shone down on a patient's abdomen, already cleaned and draped. The surgical team stood by, instruments at the ready. Dr. Noor introduced Amina. This is Amina Hassan. She helped save our CEO's life. Today, she will assist me. The team nodded in welcome. A scrub nurse handed Amina a retractor. Dr. Noor guided her hand to hold it. Steady. The procedure began. Dr. Noor made a small incision and inserted the laparoscope, a thin tube with a camera. Amina watched the monitor as the inside of the patient's body appeared. She felt awe at the clear view of tissues and organs. The monitor showed Dr. Noor skillfully maneuvering instruments. When Dr. Noor needed a tool, she asked Amina, Can you pass me the grasping forceps? Amina picked up the correct tool by name and placed it in her mentor's hand. During the surgery, Amina noticed how Dr. Noor spoke gently to the patient. Through the team, even though the patient was under anesthesia, Dr. Noor explained each step as if the patient could hear. Amina admired this kindness. When the operation ended, Dr. Noor closed the incision with neat, even stitches. Amina felt a surge of pride. She had been part of this life-changing process. Afterward, Dr. Noor walked with Amina to a small break room. She poured 2 cups of tea. You did well, she said. But there is more to surgery than hands and tools. She sipped her tea and continued, You must also care for patients' feelings. Their courage to trust us deserves our full respect. Did you see how we spoke during the procedure? Amina nodded. Yes. You explained each step calmly. Dr. Noor smiled. Good. Remember, surgery is teamwork. From the nurse who preps the patient to the anesthetist who watches vital signs, everyone matters. As you move forward, learn every role. Over the next few weeks, Amina's schedule filled with early mornings and long days. She balanced her final year of high school with hospital hours. Some mornings, she sat in Dr. Noor's office, reviewing patient files. Other times, she stood in the ICU, watching as nurses checked for lines and measured blood pressure. How to read charts, how to speak gently to patients waking from anesthesia, and how to comfort family members. One afternoon, while assisting in a knee replacement surgery, the scrub nurse slipped and nearly dropped an instrument. Before the nurse could react, Amina reached out and steadied the tool, gently placing it back on the tray. The team paused a moment, then resumed. After the surgery, the nurse patted Amina's shoulder. Quick reflexes, she said. Think. Amina felt a warm glow. She realized she was more than an observer, she was a valuable helper. Not all days were smooth. One evening, Amina stayed late to review a patient's history. The patient, an elderly man recovering from heart surgery, had shown signs of infection. His temperature was high, and his wound looked red. The night nurse called Dr. Noor's number, but it was after hours. Amina remembered her training. She measured the man's vital signs again, noting fever and a fast heartbeat. She alerted the charge nurse, who called the on-call doctor. The team arrived quickly and treated the infection. The patient improved by morning. Dr. Noor praised Amina the next day. Your attention to detail helped find that infection early, she said. You may have saved his life. Amina felt proud and resolved to always watch for small signs. Back at school, some classmates still teased Amina, but she paid little mind. She had seen too much to worry about gossip. A few friends asked about her hospital work with genuine interest. She described the surgeries, the patients, and her excitement at learning new skills. They listened with respect one weekend. The hospital held a community health fair. Dr. Nur asked Amina to join her at a booth offering free blood pressure checks. Amina measured dozens of people's blood pressure, explained what the numbers meant, and gave simple advice. Eat more vegetables, take walks, see your doctor if it stays high. Parents thanked her for her calm voice. Children smiled at her uniform. Amina realized she enjoyed teaching. At the end of the day, Dr. Noor handed Amina a stack of business cards. These are contacts for summer internships and volunteer programs. At other hospitals, she said, you have potential. Keep building your experience. Amina accepted the cards, her fingers brushing Dr. Noor's. Thank you for guiding me, she said. As autumn approached, Amina faced her final exams. She studied late into the night, balancing biology chapters with hospital notes. Her mother brought her tea and snacks, reminding her to rest. On exam day, Amina walked into her classroom with a calm mind. She answered questions about cellular structure and physiology with confidence. When results came back, Amina found she had the highest score in her class. Her biology teacher praised her in front of the school. Amina stood quietly, thinking of every hour in the hospital lab. The weeks that followed were a blur of announcements. The hospital extended Amina an honorary intern position for the next school year. She would spend 2 days a week in the hospital, officially on their roster. School agreed to adjust her timetable. Amina felt both proud and nervous. On her first official day as an intern, she wore a white jacket with the hospital logo and her name stitched below. Standing in the staff meeting room, she felt weight and honor in that jacket. Dr. Nur introduced her to the full medical staff. This is Amina Hassan, she said, a young healer among us. Treat her with respect and teach her what you can. Applause filled the room. Nurses shook her hand. Doctors welcomed her questions, and the hospital director smiled warmly. Amina realized she had become part of a team she had once only dreamed of joining. That afternoon, Amina walked through the halls, looking at the rooms where she had studied, the lab where she had practiced, and the operating theaters where she had assisted. She paused outside the ICU window to look at patients resting peacefully. She thought of the man whose infection she had caught, of the patient whose knee she had helped replace, and of the CEO whose life she had saved. In the nurse's station, Maria waited to pick her up. She waved and smiled. Amina felt joy and gratitude. She hurried over and hugged her mother. How was your first official day? Maria asked. Amina thought for a moment, then said, It felt right, like I belong. Maria smiled through tears. Always knew you would. As they drove home, Amina looked out at the city lights. She thought of the journey, from practicing on fruit peels to wearing the intern's jacket. She knew the road ahead would be long medical school, residencies, years of study. But she felt ready. She had mentors, skills, and a heart full of purpose. That night, before sleep claimed her, Amina wrote in her journal, Today I became an intern. I helped and I learned. I saw the power of small acts, steady hands, kind words, careful watch. I will keep growing, step by step, stitch by stitch, until I am a surgeon who heals others with skill and compassion. She closed the journal and drifted into dreams of bright lights and gentle hands, of patients smiling in recovery rooms, and of the promise she held inside her own steady heart. The world had once doubted her, but now it watched her rise, one confident step at a time. The morning light poured through the curtains as Amina woke with a soft smile. Today was her last day at school before the new term began, and by afternoon she would return to the hospital as an official intern. She stretched, remembering how far she had come from practicing stitches on fruit peels to standing in real operating rooms. She dressed quickly, eager to greet the day. At breakfast, Maria set 2 plates on the table, golden eggs, whole wheat toast, and fresh fruit. Amina took a bite and said, I can't believe how busy I've been. Maria smiled gently. Busy in a good way, she said. You're living your dream. Amina looked at her mother, grateful for every word of encouragement that had carried her so far. After school ended at midday, Amina hurried to the hospital. The corridors felt familiar now. each turn bringing memories of learning and growth. She passed nurses who waved, doctors who nodded, and security guards who greeted her by name, the staff entrance. She showed her ID badge and entered with a confident step. She found Dr. Nur waiting by the elevators. The tall surgeon's eyes shone with pride. "Good afternoon, intern Hassan," she said playfully. Amina laughed and replied, "Good afternoon, doctor." They stepped into the elevator together and Dr. Nur said, "I want to introduce you to something special today." Amina's heart fluttered. They arrived at the pediatric wing, where children recovering from various procedures played quietly with toys. Dr. Nur led Amina to a small room where a little boy, no more than 6, lay in bed. He had just undergone a minor heart surgery the night before. His face was pale, but his eyes bright. His mother sat by his side holding his hand. Dr. Nur whispered to Amina, "These moments matter. We need to comfort both patient and family." Amina knelt beside the mother and spoke softly. "Your son did very well. The surgery was a success, and we'll check on him often. He's strong." The mother exhaled with relief, tears of gratitude filling her eyes. The little boy mustered a weak smile and reached for a stuffed bear that Amina offered him. The child hugged it tightly, his small hand closing around the soft fur. As they left the room, Dr. Nur said, "You see, healing is not just about what we do with our hands, but also what we do with our words." Amina nodded, feeling the truth of those words settle in her heart. Later in the lab, Amina reviewed patient charts for her assigned ward. She noticed an elderly woman scheduled for gallbladder surgery the next morning. The woman, Mrs. Khan, had diabetes and a history of heart problems. Amina thought carefully and made a note to discuss her concerns with the team. When the lead surgeon arrived, Amina approached him quietly. "Sir, Mrs. Khan's chart shows her blood sugar was high this morning. I think we should confirm her level before surgery." The surgeon smiled, appreciative of her attentiveness. "Good catch. Amina, let's check it now." Together, they adjusted the plan, ensuring extra care for Mrs. Khan's safety. Afternoon sunlight glowed through the windows as Amina moved to the nurse's station. She helped prepare for lines for the next round of procedures, labeling each bag with neat handwriting, a nurse remarked. "You have such beautiful writing," Amina laughed softly. "Thank you. I learned it when I had to keep careful notes in biology class." The nurse nodded. Attention to detail matters here. Before she knew it, the hospital intercom announced a surprise inspection. A group of board members would tour the facility, and they requested to see the intern program in action. Dr. Nur and Ms. Rivera gathered the students. Board members will visit the lab, the wards, and the operating theaters. "Show them our best," Ms. Rivera instructed. Mina felt a rush of nerves, but also excitement. She knew what this meant: recognition not only for herself, but for the entire program. When the board members arrived, dressed in sharp suits and carrying folders, Amina greeted them. She guided them to the lab bench where she demonstrated proper hand-washing technique and sterile field setup. She explained the recent case where she had detected an infection early. The board members listened, impressed by her clear explanations and calm confidence. Next, she led them to Mrs. Khan's room. The surgeons and nurses praised Amina's foresight in checking the patient's blood sugar. The board members nodded, jotting notes. Finally, they visited the operating theater. There Amina stood by Dr. Nur as instruments were arranged. She pointed out safety checks, confirming patient identity, marking the surgical site, and verifying equipment. The board members murmured approval. After the tour, the head of the board approached Amina. He extended his hand and said, "Intern Hassan, your effort and skill are exceptional. You have our full support." His words were like sunlight breaking through clouds. Amina felt warmth spread through her. She thanked him and met Dr. Nur's proud smile. When the board members left, Dr. Nur hugged Amina. "You were wonderful," she said. "You've shown them the future of medicine." Amina felt tears of joy welling up. That evening, as she left the hospital, Maria waited in the parking lot. Amina hurried to her mother and hugged her tightly. "They saw me today," she said, her voice trembling. "They really saw me." Maria wiped a tear from her cheek and said, I saw you from the start. On the drive home, they talked about the day's events. Amina spoke of Mrs. Khan, of the lab demonstration, and of the board members' praise. Maria listened, her heart full. She knew her daughter was on her way to becoming a healer who would change lives. The next morning, Amina found an email from the university's medical school admissions office. The subject line read, "Offer of early admission." She felt. Her pulse quickened as she opened it. The school praised her achievements, her summer program work, her volunteer efforts, and her dedication. They offered her a place in their pre-med program starting December. Amina could not believe it. She ran to Maria's room, waving her phone. "Mom, they want me," she cried. Maria hugged her daughter, tears streaming down both their faces. "I knew you could do it," Maria said. "This is your dream coming true." Amina felt overwhelmed with gratitude. All those early mornings, late-night studies, and brave actions had led her here. Over the following weeks, Amina prepared for her new journey. She arranged her schedule, balancing high school classes, hospital intern duties, and pre-med orientation. She attended workshops on study skills and time management. She spoke with older students who had walked this path, learning how to adapt to the pace of medical training. On her last day at the hospital before starting at the university, the staff held a small farewell gathering in the lounge. Cake and tea were served. Dr. Lee presented Amina with a framed photo of her, the surgical team at the gala the moment she saved the CEO's life. Under the photo, a plaque read, "To Amina Hassan, who shows us the power of courage, skill, and compassion." The room applauded as Amina accepted the gift. Her eyes shining, Dr. Nurse stood beside her and said, "Remember, you are never alone. We will always be your mentors and friends." Amina nodded, her heart full, looked around at the faces she had come to know and loved, the nurses, doctors, and patients who had shaped her growth. She whispered, "Thank you," and meant it with every fiber of her being. That evening, Amina and Maria sat on their small balcony overlooking the city. The sky glowed with sunset colors. Amina opened her scrapbook and added new pages, photos, of her intern jacket, the board visit, and her acceptance letter. She wrote new notes about the people she would miss and the dreams she would chase. Maria wrapped her daughter in a warm embrace. "This is just the beginning," she said. Amina rested her head on her mother's shoulder and replied, "Yes. And I will always remember how you believed in me when no one else did." As night fell, Amina closed her eyes and imagined the future. White coats, stethoscopes, operating rooms filled with teamwork and hope. She saw herself standing confidently at the head of the table, guiding others as she had been guided. She saw herself comforting frightened patients, saving lives, inspiring the next generation of healers. In the quiet of the night, Amina whispered a promise to herself and to her mother. "No matter how far I go, I will keep my heart steady and my hands strong. I will always care for others with kindness and skill." And with that promise, she fell into a peaceful sleep, ready to rise each day with the courage and compassion that had carried her to this moment and would carry her through every challenge yet to come.